that is spoken about only in whispers. A dark area that spawns the beginnings of urban legends. A place where anything can happen and usually does. During the light of day, it hides just outside of view. But when the sun goes down, spirits, creatures of the night, roam free, and things do go bump in the night. It is in every state and every country, and there is no escaping it, no matter how safe you feel behind your locked doors and latched windows. So we invite you to turn down the lights and turn up your radio while we join Dave Schrader and Tim Dennis, your hosts, on a journey into the darkness on the edge of town.
Good evening and welcome to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio, right here on your home for Paranormal Talk Radio every Saturday and Sunday night. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, sitting across the board from me, Mr. Tim Dennis, co-host and producer. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening, sir.
Well, let's make a couple of quick mentions. We had a good time today. We were out all day at the Healthy Life Expo, and we will be there again tomorrow. Good news. If you want to come on out, there is no charge to attend. Although the website says there is, they've waived the charges in lieu of the economic situation that's currently hitting America. They wanted to give you a chance to just come in, feel good about yourselves, learn a little bit about how to take better care of yourselves, and have a good time. There's a lot of great speakers in there and a lot of really cool activity, a lot of stuff you guys want to check out. As a matter of fact, one of the things we're going to be talking about tomorrow on our show, Tim, is one of the guests that we met at this event today.
Yep.
And they're going to be talking about how we can remap our brain and our brain waves to fight depression, illness, and increase our psychic awareness and intuitive.
Yeah.
So it's pretty interesting stuff. We're going to be out there. But again, join us tomorrow, Sunday, October 19th, at the Hopkins Eisenhower Community Center. That's at 1001 Highway 7 in Hopkins. And we're there tomorrow from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I hope you will join us. Again, it's the Healthy Life Expo at the Hopkins Eisenhower Community Center in Hopkins, Minnesota, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tim and I will be out there. And then Monday, Timothy.
Yes.
Something pretty cool going on. Well, first of all, our girl, we got to throw some props her way. Nicole Remini is going to be on Showcase Minnesota on Monday. She's going to be there talking about the 5 horror movies you've never seen that you should. So she's going to be on that. So set your TiVos to TiVo Showcase Minnesota on Monday, the 20th, and watch that. But that evening, you can join Tim and I, and Adrian Lee, our international correspondent, is going to join us out at the Minneapolis Indie Horror Fest, which takes place at the Rock Nightclub. For more information on that, give a call at 651-770-7822, 651-770-7822. 3 horrifying full-length features from Minnesota's finest directors. You're going to want to check it out. A lot of cool stuff, a lot of fun. You come in costume. There's costume contests. You can win new releases from Warner Brothers Home Videos. You can win tattoos, comics, magazines, concert tickets, and more. They're also featuring shorts from Transylvania TV, Teddy Scares, and Zombie Tofu. So again, if you want more information, that's on Monday the 20th, the Minneapolis Indie Horror Fest at the Rock Nightclub, and you can get information by calling 651-770-7822. And again, last and final thing we'll make a mention of, make sure to join us. We're going to have our first annual Halloween party out in Sauk Center at the very haunted Palmer House Hotel. Going to have a great time out there. We've got Adrian, Bree, Tim, myself, even Ben, the intern, is going to be joining us.
Yeah.
Susan Cummins, our lovely book critic, and Nicole Remini, the lovely movie critic, will be with us. So we have almost the entire cast of Darkness Radio will be out there. It'd be a great chance to meet and greet. We're going to also, as you just heard in the news before here, they were talking about Second Harvest Food Shelf. We are going to do a charity auction at that event where we're going to raise money for Second Harvest Food Shelf. We're going to auction off 10 spots to go ghost hunt with us from 1:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the morning. Lights out in the Palmer House Hotel. We get to investigate the entire time. So it's going to be a blast. Hopefully you'll join us. Go check out our website at darknessevents.com. Click on the Palmer House Hotel Halloween party. There's phone numbers there for local hotels so you can stay locally if you'd like to come out and party and get drunk and have some fun with us and not drive. So check out those numbers. Come on out. It's free to attend the party. You're going to have a blast with us. We look forward to seeing you out there.
And just remember, for the auction, come with an open pocketbook, open wallet, whatever. Bring as much as you can, because it is coming up on Thanksgiving, and a lot of families do. A lot of families that are unfortunate and don't have money on their side end up skimping on Thanksgiving. We want to make a happy Thanksgiving for everybody.
Check this out. And the reason that we chose Second Harvest Food Shelf and Second Harvest Heartland, aside from dealing with 51 different counties throughout the state of Minnesota, check this out. For every dollar donated, they can supply $9 worth of food. So a $50 donation that you can make, and look it up, ladies and gentlemen, go to Second Harvest Heartland online here in Minnesota. For $50, they will deliver $450 worth of food to people in need. So that's a great, great program to be a part of, and we're very happy to help support that and make it a part of Darkness Radio's family to give that money to that fund. And we're going to get going. I will mention more about the story contest we have coming up. Again, if you want to be a part of that, send in your original scary stories, write it in a narrative form so it's in a story form. We're going to have those, email them to Dave at Darkness Radio, put in the subject line Scary Story Contest. We have great prizes we're going to be giving out. I'm going to have more up on the website in the next few days for you about that. Make them about 2,000 words, 1,500 to 2,000 words if you'd like. And we are going to be working on a really cool program that your story may be published in a book. So, get those stories out to us right away at dave@darknessradio.com. Now, this evening, Tim, on our show, we're privileged to have with us somebody I had a chance to meet a few weeks ago at the Mid-South Paranormal Conference out in Louisville, Kentucky. My first night there, I got to meet this gentleman. His name is Robbie Thomas, and he is a psychic and a medium. He's a remote viewer. Radio host. I mean, geez, this guy does everything, Tim. There's not even a need for you and I in the field because Robbie Thomas is there.
Let's just turn it over and go home.
He's a psychic superhero.
Well, there you go.
How's that work for you, Robbie? Is that a pretty good introduction?
I do Windows.
He does Windows, too. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, for the first time, and hopefully not the last, Into the Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show, our guest for this evening, Robbie Thomas. Good evening, Robbie.
Good evening, guys. Thank you for having me.
Robbie, I have an opportunity to meet a lot of people in this field that claim to be psychics or mediums, and I will say that out of the hundreds that have introduced themselves to us, we're very fond of about 5 or 6. Right. There's a lot of people out there that claim to have abilities and don't, and, we go to the ends of the earth to support the people that we find to be very genuine and have a calling. And, I had the chance to sit down with you and, just be guys. We had a couple of drinks, just got to know each other, got to hear about you, learn things. You weren't out to impress. There was nothing you need to prove to me. You're already excelled in what you do. So it was a great time to get to talk to you. And what really, I guess, intrigued me about your story is that not only do you help people connect with people on the other side, you do readings, but you also go out of your way and for no money to you to help solve crimes. And you've been called in on cases to help out and actually deliver the goods, and these things can actually be looked up and researched. That was what impressed me. I also love the fact that you told me, Dave, I never accept the reward money either.
That's right.
And that part really touched my heart as a father and, husband and friend, if, knowing how much pain and anguish goes into the loss of someone and knowing that a lot of people put everything they have on the line to pay for reward money. And you just said, Dave, these people have been through enough hell. I don't need their money afterwards. I do what I can to help. And that really impressed me, and what a good guy you were. And just as we got to know each other over the weekend, it was just a pleasure to get to know you. Now I want to share that with our listening audience. First of all, if you'd like, you can get more information by Robbie going to his website. It's robbiethomas.net, and that's ROBBIE Thomas, THOMAS.net. You can get information there so you can find out how to get readings with Robbie. You can read about all the great things he has going on, including some of his live events he has coming up, so you get a chance to go out and meet him. And Robbie, let's start off at the beginning so we can give some of our listeners background on you, and then we're going to go in. You were gracious enough to agree that tonight's show you're going to spend some time helping look at some cold cases.
That's true.
And I've sent you off some names, and you've sent me some information. We're going to be covering that tonight, along with some of the investigators still part of these cases. So let's start off in the beginning. How old were you when you realized you had a gift?
I was about age 3, as far back as I can recall. I used to tell my mother, am I adopted? Or I know I have a sister out there. And she would say, Ron, he's doing it again. And my father would say, get in here, Robbie, and stop bothering your mother. Well, yeah, back in the day, being Roman Catholic and Christian, very strict upbringing, my mother had a child out of wedlock. So the church took the baby and gave the baby up for adoption. Now, years later, she meets my father, marries him, has me. And then you have this 3-year-old snot-nosed kid going around saying, am I adopted? Or I know I have a sister out there. I was just really confused and learning what was going on and being shown different things. So I'll take you fast forward to age 28 now. Age 28, I had a vision the night before, and it was almost like I was paralyzed. And a lot of people do have these occurrences where their disposition is that they can't move, and they're in bed. They're like stone-faced, but they're seeing what's going on. And this vision, they said that they were going to take care of me. Everything would be fine. And they laid out for me what was going to happen the next day. So I went over to my mother's house like I do every day, and to have coffee, toast, or what have you. I walked in, sat in the kitchen. She wouldn't look at me. And I said to her, Mom, I'm really compelled. I have to tell you this. And I said, today's your day. And she just turned right around, didn't look at me, but she looked right through me, asked me to leave, and said that she'd call me in an hour. Then you have that push-pull factor. And I know a lot of the listening audience, they understand this, where you want to stay, but you got to go, and you're just not there. You're discombobulated. So you go home. And I'm sitting in the kitchen with my wife and my best friend. About an hour and a half later, the phone did ring, and it was my father on the phone. He was screaming, "It's your mother, it's your mother." Well, we raced over, and I remember them pulling her out of the house on a gurney, and the guy sitting on top of her doing CPR. And I remember her purple little socks and, the little things that keep me going in life, knowing that what I do now is for a purpose. After I sat in the backyard for 2 weeks calling God everything I could call him and raising my hand to him and just doing what I wanted to be me and this was the whole aspect of being human, and was recognizable by God and Spirit. So out of that, I gained the perspective of what was proper in life. My family pulled me aside, and they said, Robbie, after all these years, you were right. And they introduced me to my sister that my mother gave up for adoption. They did a big radio broadcast in my hometown. The media was out, and so we go right back to age 3.
Wow, that's, just to have that experience and to know that, how are that conflict, and you must have been obscene knowing that this is your mom's day and dropping that bomb on her. How do you see? I don't know. Tim, could you do that if you knew that it was today? Could you? I guess it'd be the way so you could say your goodbyes and have that happen. But did that impact you that way, Robbie? Did you ever feel like, damn it, I shouldn't have said anything?
Yeah, it was a there's a little bit more to it. It was leading up to it, and I used to say to her, Mom, there's a picture of Jesus on the wall. Talk to him because he talks to me all the time, and he'll talk to you. So when in the midst of her passing, Father Dales came over and he goes, it was amazing because the message she told me to give to you before she passed, like she was sick in hospital for a little bit and then come home and everything was fine. And he said, the funny thing was, she said to tell you that Jesus spoke to her and everything would be fine. And I just it just blew me away. It leaves you this feeling within that, there's no malice, but you have this reverent feeling that whatever you see, it's not of you, it's of something stronger and of a higher being. To say that, Mom, today's your day, yeah, it killed me. It tore my heart out. I write about her in my books. I talk about her in every show. She's an angel, and that's one thing I want the viewers to understand, listeners to understand. We never lose anybody. We always gain an angel. So you must know this. This is true.
All right, with that, we have to take our first break of the hour. Robbie, stick with us. Thank you all for tuning in. You're listening to Darkness Radio this evening. We're discussing psychic Robbie Thomas, and we're going to be looking at some cold case files that we've thrown to him, including the Jacob Wetterling case, which has been of great interest here in the Minnesota area. We're going to be back with more Robbie Thomas, learn a little bit more about him, and then we'll start cases after about the 9:30, 9:40 mark. Please stay tuned. Good evening. Welcome back to Darkness on the Edge of Town Paranormal Radio Show. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, sitting across the board from me, Mr. Tim Dennis. Let's remind you tomorrow, come visit Tim and I at the Healthy Life Expo. We're going to be joined by Adrian Lee, our international news correspondent, will be out there. You can come on out at the Hopkins Eisenhower Community Center, located at 1001 Highway 7 in Hopkins. It's free admission to come on in. It's open 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. tomorrow. A lot of amazing speakers, a lot of amazing companies there. Come on out and check it out, and come out and say hi to Tim and I. We're going to go back to our guest guest for this evening. Again, we're speaking to psychic medium Robbie Thomas. Robbie lives in Canada and is joining us live via the phone here this evening to discuss about his life and about the things that he's done. Now, Robbie, at what age did you start working with law enforcement on crimes?
Go back about 17 years ago. I'm coming up on my 18th year. My first case, and I don't tell anybody to do this, and everybody who's listening, I always refer back to an analogy or a way of speaking to the folks out there. I put myself in harm's way, and I don't recommend this for anyone. I lived in this apartment building. This gentleman that was living in the same apartment building, he had black all around him. Now, what I mean by black is the aura and the space in between. I can see good through people. I can see bad in people. And this gentleman had just black. He was just black. I knew the superintendent, and I wanted to get to know him a little bit better to find out what was going on. And, you know, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that this gentleman was in trial already. But what happened was we befriended him. We went up to his apartment, and immediately I started picking up everything that was going on. And in relation to this gentleman starts to, and by the way, you know, I'm young back then. We had a few beers, and we're sitting around befriending each other, talking. He decides to sit beside me, about 2 feet from me, and starts feeling me up for a wire. I couldn't understand why, and he, in the midst of him feeling me up for a wire, he starts telling me that he's in trial right now, and he wanted to see if he was being set up. And I knew right away what this was all about, and seeing what was going on through him. He shot a gentleman by the name of Mark Campbell, who was 14 years of age, working in a gas station, and the other gentleman that was with him, and their names, like I say their names, I never show, is Brad Anderson and Thomas Cook. Now, Thomas Cook's in jail. He murdered again. He sits in jail for life now, which is great. Brad Anderson got off on a technicality. He told me during the midst of our conversation that he would get off on a technicality, and then if I spoke of anything of this, he would kill me. And I'm looking at this gentleman, and you know, if you can picture a miniature Eddie Van Halen, this is what this guy looked like. He was 5 foot, sawed off nothing. He had the long hair and exact appearance of Eddie Van Halen. I just couldn't get over what I was seeing, what I was hearing. And when I went back to my own apartment, I called the police up, and Commissioner Pinsino and the detectives wanted me to go back and wear wire. They were desperate to get information in order to lead to the conviction of these two individuals. And being through what I went through in that hour and a bit, or 2 hours and a bit, with these guys, I would not go back. And you should have seen the scene. It was, his girlfriend was pregnant at the time, and she was pacing back and forth in the apartment, telling him to shut up, please don't tell any more. And these guys were really letting everything out. I knew exactly where they ran, the course of action they took. I knew how and who was on the lookout and who pulled the trigger. You know, and you look at monsters like this, and it just spurred me to continue on. And here we are, almost 18 years later.
Can you tell us a little bit about, before we go into the half-an-hour break here in about 4 minutes, can you tell me a little bit about the case that you solved in Louisville? I mean, that one was so impressive to me, and you know, as you knew, as we were sitting there you were telling me the story, I picked up my cell phone and I called Bree, our national correspondent, and I said, Bree, I'm going to tell you a story. I want you to research it and see if there's any legitimacy to this. And she came back to me and said, yeah, Dave, I found all the information on this case, and we actually had her deliver it in the news that following week after I met you. Just to tell people a little bit about you. So go ahead and explain the case that you were a part of for Louisville.
Yeah, absolutely. I went down to Kentucky a couple times, actually, but the one you're talking about, Cesar Cano, 4-year-old little boy, I got a call. It was June 30th of 2007, and it was a liaison in Kentucky saying, can you please help us out? The little boy's missing. And I said, okay, fine. Give me a little bit and think about this, because I had family over. And my wife said, no, you go back. You don't do that. You go back. And so I called her back up, and I said, okay, because Canada Day was the next day. That's our holiday. But I sat down, I looked at the picture. That's all I had was a picture of a 4-year-old little beautiful boy. And for 4 hours, I was channeling him, promising him I'd bring him back to his mother. I got information where I asked him, please give me identification markers, and he showed me 4 stadium lights, and they were off. And I couldn't understand why he was showing me stadium lights off, so I wrote that down. Then I said, give me a name. He gives me name John. And so I wrote down John, and if you look at my automatic handwriting, that's on robbiethomas.net or anywhere on the net, you can see where this all came through. And if you stood on the front of the porch of the murderer's home and looked straight ahead just through the clearing, Papa John Stadium was right there. I said, I need more, and he gave me construction, men in orange vests, while right in front of the murderer's home, they were doing construction, right in front of the murderer's home on that road right there. And Caesar was playing with the red flags in front of that house. I asked him for a name. Please give me the murderer's first name. And he gave me his name as Cecil. I put it at the top of the page, Cecil. I asked him for the second name, and it took time. And I heard Eugene, and I didn't understand because it would just come over like Eugene. And so what happened was I put it as Juan, but the man's middle name was Eugene. And I just misinterpreted it, but we got it. Repeat offender of 2 little boys, which he was. It's all there in the paper, on the paper. And then it broke off after about 2 hours. It was like dead cold, and what I feel is the deadness of the cold being broken away. And so I was having a fit in my office, didn't know what to do, and I couldn't get the boy or the feeling anymore. And then I started seeing afterwards, like post. And so I started seeing a place where it was dark and it was a white vehicle and like an area of garbage, while the garbage trucks in Louisville are white and inside them are dark, obviously, and that's where they found the boy. They showed me dogs. I couldn't get over why he was showing me puppy dogs and dogs. And while they took canines and they went down the basement where I said he was, and they found the evidence of the boy being in the closet locked away, like I said. There was a whole bunch of stuff on there, and it touches me, and it still touches me to talk about this because I live every case, and that's your Louisville case for you.
I've got a quick question, then we're going to go to break here. Kristen from our chat room, Bell, she wants to know, can you give a rough estimate, what percentage of cases that you're involved with have you had a direct impact on? I can understand her frustration. She says that she's frustrated. You don't often hear the follow-up on on cases in which psychics are involved.
Right. Yeah, you don't hear them on the outside of the cases that they're involved very much. I'm direct in correlation for every one of them, actually. A very well-known producer of a huge radio program goes missing in Florida, and at the Hamilton Police Department down in Florida, they issued a missing persons report. I got the phone call. I told them that he would call them in 3 days. They laughed at me because they had other so-called psychics, as they call them, say that he was shot and dead in a hotel room. One said he was drowned, and I said, no, he's just mad. You passed him up for a promotion. He'll call you in 3 days. And they laughed, and we hung up. Well, I got that letter on my wall right now from that major radio program, and he did call in 3 days, and he was exactly in Oklahoma, like I said, where he was, and he was mad because he got passed up for a promotion. You get it on the back end, and that's the reward. And if anybody out there who's looking for any type of reward, who does any work like this whatsoever, you're in the wrong business.
I agree. Well, we're going to take our break here for the second hour. Stick with us. Robbie, hang on. We'll be back with you more, and we'll be on with Tracy Armstrong as our next guest with Robbie, and we're going to be looking at a case for a little boy named Logan that she's been in search of. So stay tuned. You're listening to Darkness Radio. Good evening. Welcome back to Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. Across the board from me, Tim Dennis, and our guest this evening, psychic medium Robbie Thomas. And Robbie is, aside from being psychic medium, he's also a remote viewer and has been called in on many cases to help try to bring closure for murder cases, missing children cases. Before we went to the break, Robbie was talking about a case that he was called into in Oklahoma, or the gentleman ended up living in Oklahoma. We've got our next caller on the line with us, Robbie, and her name is Tracy. And Tracy had come to me looking for help on a case, and she's gone to quite a few people looking for some insight and background on this. And Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Why don't you give us, Tracy, a real quick, synopsis of this little boy. And again, we're not going to give the full name. The little boy's name is Logan. And maybe you could tell us, what is your tie to this case, Tracy, and why is there such a passion on your part to keep this vigil alive?
Well, I don't know why I'm so struck to find him. I think it's because I have kids of my own, and he was murdered 5 years ago, and they've never found his body. His mother killed him, and she is in jail now for murder with murder one with no chance of parole. I guess it just breaks my heart, as probably it does anybody's, that, hears about a little boy that is lost forever, and doesn't have a proper burial place. And I just felt struck that, I know people like you, and perhaps maybe that's why I'm moved to do everything I can to try to find his body and give him a final resting place. That's all I want. I just want him to have a place to, be buried, and people can put flowers on his grave and remember him.
Now, I brought this to Robbie's attention because for listeners of our show for the last 2 years, we've talked about Tracy and her case a few times. As a matter of fact, it was a gentleman using his device to try to communicate with the other side and bring in information, and it just broke my heart that he charged Tracy twice $250 to help find a missing boy. And I just always kind of felt that was the wrong way to go. When I brought it up to Robbie was very kind and said, Dave, let's see what we can do to help this gal. Now, Tim, this is something I didn't tell you off air, but and I wanted to bring this up to you. This is another reason that Robbie kind of blew me away. Mm-hmm. He called me up and he said, Dave, I got to ask you something. Do you know anything about this case? I said, no. I've tried to keep myself out of the dark. And he said, I got to ask you something, though. He goes, does this make sense to you? And he started mentioning a few parts. I'm like, no. I said, let's just go ahead and bring Tracy on the line right now. And I conferenced her in, and he started mentioning some things to her. And at first it wasn't gauging right for her. They had the direction, both agreed in the direction of where they believe the body was placed.
Okay.
But then Robbie started giving some other clues, which I'll have him talk about here in a second. What was really intriguing to me is he gave some specific clues, and she called back 5 minutes later and said, holy blank, Dave, there's a place named very similar to that right up the road from me. It's right near this location by a sandy road that goes in the same direction. And it was able to knock down a lot of this. So it was just very intriguing. But, Robbie, you had a chance to take a look at this little boy's picture and his birth date, which you asked from us to kind of sink in and see what you could get. Now, the question she's asking again is, and we're not going to give, ladies and gentlemen, understand, tonight on the radio, you will not hear the final destination of where he believes this body to be buried, or any of the bodies, or children or people that are missing. That will be reserved for the police. He's given me paperwork on each one of the cases that we're going to forward to the police officers and the investigators on the case. But because there are goofballs that will go up and dig up every square inch of an area to try to collect on a reward or try to make themselves famous, Robbie does not give that information on the air out of respect for the family and the law enforcement officials. Because if you have some dumbass gold mine digger out there looking for this, that can disturb really important evidence for the case as well. But Robbie, you got this. What did you immediately start to pick up on with this case?
It's funny you say immediately, because that's my very first word was immediately, when I read underneath Logan's name. And I feel that I'm not far from home, buried in a sandy area. Now, I don't want to go into too much detail, but we had, it's Tracy, right? Am I correct?
That's right.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Tracy. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, hon. Thank you.
Good.
And when Tracy was on the phone with us, I started describing this road in this certain area, and it looked like a desert-like to me because I'm getting flashes. And so I'm writing all this out, and I explain what's on my left and what's on my right. And she's thinking, and we went on to the next part. And the next part is graphic for our listening audience. And whenever I do profiling, and I've had families sit in my home, they all and everyone needs to know the details. You never sugarcoat anything. You have to tell it, because there's specifics in the way that a case runs. And so when I detailed point number 2, it was that I was beaten and hit so hard it caused me to bleed and to become unconscious. But here's the thing, and they should have went and checked back then what medication she was taking, because I felt that this was given to me, and it made me go to sleep or become unconscious, and so that I could be, like, subdued. And And then, I look at that and I explain exactly how I'm buried and what I'm buried in. And then you could see, because it looks in a certain accordance to what I described. I came up with a name of a place, and I didn't understand. It was like really.
Now, you said we can give this away because we're not telling what city or state, and we're not giving the last name. Can you explain a little bit about how did you get, when you're getting the information, you said that you feel like you're in something silvery.
Yes.
Or very shiny, but you're not deep in the ground.
Exactly. And when the sun shines on me, I look shiny. And that's what was said to me.
Okay.
So I'm hearing what's being said to me, and I'm actually seeing what is being around me. So when I heard that last sentence, when the sun shines on me, I look shiny. So he's not very deep. And the way I want to say it is, part of it is actually showing. So whatever it is, the bag, or it's very thin on top of him, what he's in is shiny.
Okay. Now, you had also given a location name where you had come in and said that you believe it's something like humpback.
Yes.
You saw a sign or something that just said humpback to you, which isn't the word that and we won't give the actual word because we don't want Tracy to, again, she's going to take it with the police officers that she's been working with on this, correct, Tracy?
Yes.
And give them this information. You saw this specific area, and possibly railroad travel had been there or still goes through that area, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the way it came to me was, I heard the word, and I didn't understand, so I wrote it down on a piece of paper. And what you got is all the typed fine stuff. But I wrote it down, and I put it in quotes like you see it in quotes there. And I'm thinking humpback, and I'm thinking, what has that got to do with anything? Because I know Oklahoma's not near the ocean, and I'm thinking, what the hell is humpback about? Mm-hmm. But, you take everything that comes into you, and it is a clue, and it's for a reason. So I put that down, and then I said, I feel like I want to go to, outskirts, and I gave a direction, a direct correlation to what Tracy came back and said, that this name was so close to a place that I mentioned, and about the railroad, and then also the way that the direction itself. I'm not going to give the right direction. I'm going to say like east north or something like that. Right? But it was like that, and that's exactly what it was called. Am I right, Tracy?
It was real close. It wasn't humpback, but it almost sounded identical.
And then with the direction that he had originally said to you, that you felt it was that way, but where he was explaining didn't make sense to you because it was the opposite direction.
Exactly.
Until you started to piece together that the Sandy Road is also connected to, or the way to get on a road that has something to do with that direction as well. And again, folks, I'm sorry for being so vague on it, but we want to keep it for the law enforcement officials to get that information.
Exactly.
Now, has there been, I know that you were going to try to take a look at it yourself. Did you have a chance to go out there, Tracy?
Yes, I did. I went the next night, and my dad went with me, and it was really weird because when I told him where I wanted to go, he said, well, that's your grandparents grew up around there. So it just gets weirder and weirder, everything that he tells me, my dad said that my grandparents grew up there. But we did go out. I took some pictures, and I told Robbie that I would, and I'll try to forward those to him after tomorrow or Monday or sometime, and so he can look at those and maybe determine if I'm in the right area. We obviously didn't find Logan, but it could have been a road that she would have went off. Robbie told me that people that kill their kids don't think like we do, and we've all been looking in a different direction, and because there's quite a time frame that she could have moved him from the first burial to the second burial, and we do believe that he was buried twice, that he was moved again, and it could definitely be a place that she might have just pulled off the road and said, okay, I got to get rid of him now. I don't know what the circumstances were when she was moving him, but anything's possible at this point.
That was just eerie to me to hear him, and especially when you were able to corroborate the fact that he put these other clues together in such a way, and they kind of matched up with an area that you're familiar with.
Yeah,
right.
The sand road, the direction of the he said it was on a paved road and then off on a sand road, and he was buried in sand, and the direction of the road and the name of this place, and he also, the name of this, when he thought Humpback, he said it was either like a pass or a station or some, he didn't really know what it was, but he said perhaps like a gas, electric, some kind of station, and as soon as he said that, I knew exactly where he was talking about. And it, ran right along the same direction, and then you turn off and you go on the sand road, and it just all fell together.
Well, Tracy, we want to thank you for bringing this to Robbie's attention, and we hope that the information, Robbie will supply with more information offline after he takes a look at the pictures with you as well that you're supplying. But thank you for keeping up the fight in Logan's name and trying to find a resting place for him.
Well, Dave, you're helping me a lot. People in my direction all the time, so I want to thank you too. And Robbie, God bless you for what you do also.
No, God bless you, hon, and thank you so very much, and I'll help you out in any way I can.
I'll let you know when we find him.
Thank you very much. And
okay.
Stick with us, folks. We're going to be back with more, and we're going to cover the Jacob Wetterling case when we come back. You're listening to Darkness Radio. Welcome back to Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. This evening, we're looking at cold case files with psychic medium profiler Robbie Thomas. Our next case is one that hits very close to home here in Minnesota. Jacob Wetterling was born February 17th, 1978. He was an American boy from St. Joseph, Minnesota. He was kidnapped from his hometown at the age of 11 on October 22nd, 1989. He and his brother and a friend were bicycling home from a convenience store when a masked gunman came out of a driveway and ordered the boys to throw their bikes into a ditch and lie down on the ground. He asked each boy their age. Jacob's brother and friend were told to run toward a nearby wooded area and not look back or else he would shoot them. After a short run, both boys did look back and saw the gunman grab Jacob by the elbow and walk away. As of 2008, the whereabouts of Jacob and the gunman are still unknown. We asked Robbie to look into this case. Now, Robbie, why don't we go ahead and cover this? And I know points 4 and 5 you give names, and we're going to leave those points out on tonight's show and forward them to the Stearns County Sheriff's Department and see if that helps them. But why don't we cover now the main question everybody has, Robbie, which has been heavily debated. I believe Sylvia Brown has even weighed in and said that she believes that Jacob is still alive. Do you get that he is still alive, or has he crossed over?
Yeah, the very first thing I felt, the feeling I get when I look at a picture and determine it comes from a feeling. It doesn't come from me just thinking this. It's cold. And again, I don't feel he's living. I try to look the other way to see if he was, because you always look for the good. You don't want to look for the bad. And I didn't feel a breath at all. And in the term of him being abducted, I would say in the timeline too, I don't have this down there for you, but within a week, this boy was not here no more.
Okay. Now, what can you tell us about the perpetrator?
This individual frequent places that were sports-oriented, like hockey, ice skating rinks in the area, public skating, places like this where there were children. The funny thing that gets me is by listening to everything that comes in, and I learned never to second guess anything that comes in. When it comes in, it's information, and you hear that old adage, go with your first instinct, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this is more than instinct. And when I see this individual speaking to different parents, and, very oddly, and if anybody out there who's listening could just please look back, these are little details that we overlook and take for granted. But this guy really stuck out like a sore thumb. He was very odd. His conjecture of contact with people was very odd. He would ask off-the-wall questions and make people think twice, like, this guy's a nut or a fruitcake. And this is how he got his information and how he stalked children. He would just not look at them or go and see where they are, but he would get information from people who were close tied to him or to an individual that he was stalking. Now, I find this very weird, and every case I have ever done, I've always seen how criminals act. And they do oddball things that we don't really look at in the retrospect, but we should. And then once we start to look back and see what and take our traces, we can find this guy. And when I'm sitting there and I said to you, the name came fast, and I got a name, and then the second name right away. And when things like this happen to me, I write them down, as in the murder case of Caesar in Louisville. I got Cecil, Eugene, and the guy's last name is New. You take that information, you put it down, and it's 100% accurate.
Right.
We have to look at this stuff and not.
Do you get that the man that was responsible, is he in jail now, or is he not?
I feel this man has a past, a very deep past of law progression. So the name I gave, they're going to take a look at this. They're going to see it. They're going to run it 5 ways to Sunday, and they're going to see that, it could be this guy or this guy, and they're going to get the MO, and they're going to find out what's going on, and they'll nail it down, just like they did in Louisville. This individual is still out there.
Okay, so you don't believe that he's in jail currently?
I don't. I don't think. I hate using that word. Think. I know this individual has a past because I've seen a record of.
Okay. But I mean, he's not currently incarcerated for something that you can tell?
No, not that I feel. No.
We have about 45 seconds left in this. We'll come back and finish up with Jacob after the top of the hour. What else can you tell us about the Jacob Wetterling case right now?
I can say that the same MO from this man has been complained about in the past. So here's another thing too. There's complaints that have been lodged about this individual in the past. So there should be record of, and this is what the police should be looking at, and we should move forward with this. So the name that's there, and you mentioned, well, it could be that, and I said, it could because it came fast. I gave you 2 types of last name,
right.
1 first name.
Now, you also believe that, we have about 20 seconds left here, but you believe in the fact that this male has actually had conversations with the families, where does that sound, and that the male made it a point to actually go out of his way to speak with those victims, and you say victims, more of like a kind of perverted way of getting information from those innocent people.
Absolutely. Their mindset is warped. So
and people even spoke about how odd it was that this male would become so interfaced with them and driving home the point to no knowledge of his victims from those close to the victims as well, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're going to take our top of the hour break. When we come back, if you could give me a few seconds, do you think that you have a location or information on where you think Jacob could be located? And then again, we're going to be passing this information on to the Stearns County Sheriff's Department Monday morning as well.
Okay.
Okay, we'll be back. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Darkness Radio. Our guest is Robbie Thomas. He's a psychic criminal profiler. He's a medium. He is a remote viewer. For more information on Robbie, check out his website at robbiethomas.net. That's ROBBIE Thomas.net. We'll be back with more, and we'll be looking at a few more cases after the top of the hour break. You're listening to Darkness Radio.